Hi, my name is Alice Klettner, and this is a video abstract of an article that I've recently had published in the British Journal of Management. And the article is called Stewardship Codes and the Role of Institutional Investors in Corporate Governance, an International Comparison and Typology. So the paper is about corporate governance, the way a company is directed and controlled. And if we go back to the fundamentals of corporate governance, it's about understanding the relationships between three groups of people: the executive managers, the board of directors, and the shareholders of the company. And this paper is directed at understanding a bit more about the role of shareholders in corporate governance, particularly the group of shareholders that we call institutional investors. And the reason this paper focuses on these large institutional investors is because they have become increasingly significant in share markets around the world. No longer are most shares held by dispersed and relatively powerless retail investors. Instead, share ownership has concentrated into the hands of large global institutional investors, such as pension funds and investment banks. Now, what does this mean for theories of corporate governance? Now, the way in which the paper explores theories of corporate governance is to use stewardship codes as evidence of industry understanding of the role of institutional investors. So stewardship codes are industry-led soft regulation, first introduced in the UK in 2010 and rapidly proliferating around the world. And they promote investor stewardship. But what exactly does this mean? So the paper looks at four theories that explain the role of institutional investors in corporate governance, and it compares those theories in terms of their implications for stewardship behaviour. It starts by arguing that agency theory sees institutional investors as stewards of companies, their job being to monitor and engage with the management of those companies to ensure corporate performance. Emerging theories of agency capitalism, however, would see institutional investors as stewards of funds, their primary duty being to look after and maximize those funds for their beneficiaries. So they might diversify and manage those funds in different ways, whereby they might use strategies of exit rather than strategies of voice. Universal ownership theories see those institutional investors as stewards of an entire economy or market. It argues that because they own such a large portion of that market, they are best off using collective action to influence companies as a whole. Stakeholder theory sees those investors as stewards of society, because it takes a longer term view of investments, and rather than just looking at financial performance, the investors are looking at long-term corporate sustainability in terms of environmental, social and financial issues. So taking these four theories together, we are left with the question of, to whom should institutional investors act as stewards? Are they primarily stewards of companies, funds, economies, or society? So through an analysis of 19 stewardship codes from around the world, the paper identifies four different types of code reflecting four different approaches to the role of institutional investors in corporate governance. Type 1 sees institutional investors as stewards of both funds and companies, recognizing this dual role in modern markets. Type 2 sees investors as stewards of companies, taking that more traditional view of shareholders as monitors of corporate financial performance. Type 3 sees institutional investors as stewards of funds, primarily focused on their fiduciary duties to their beneficiaries. And Type 4 sees investors as stewards of society, encouraging long-term corporate sustainability. So where next? Well, the typology provides a framework which I hope could be used for future research to explore the reasons behind these national differences in the meaning of investor stewardship. And there are some suggestions in the paper that perhaps this cross-country variation could be explained using theories of political economy, varieties of capitalism, perhaps dominant share ownership patterns, or code issuer identities. And if you have any questions or comments on the paper, please feel free to contact me.